In this video, we're going to be talking about how to query different types of GA4 BigQuery properties. Right, so I'm now on the BigQuery interface, and you can see my screen is split into two. So on the left-hand side, this is where I'm writing my query. And currently what I'm doing is I'm selecting everything from a specific day's worth of data for our piped out GA4 data. And just to note, this is the daily table. This is not the streaming table. Then on the right hand side, what we have is all the schema for this specific table. So it's a little bit easier to kind of understand what we're querying and what we're looking at. What I'm going to do firstly is I'm just going to pull some basic properties. The first thing to note here is that we have two different types of properties or fields. We've got sort of individual fields here. And then you can see these ones that contain an arrow. These are nested fields. We're going to come onto them later, but we'll just work with the basic stuff first. So what I'm going to do is just select some basic properties. So I'm just going to pull the event name and then some date fields, and I'll pull the user pseudo ID. We'll go here and then we'll go event name, comma, and then we'll go event date, and then event timestamp, fantastic. And then we'll go for user pseudo ID. User pseudo ID, perfect. And I need to actually remove the select star. And then we can go here and then we'll hit run. And we can see that our query results are all here. So we've got the event name, event date, event timestamp, and then the user pseudo ID as well. So that's how we can pull some very, very basic properties. Moving on to step 2, how do we select some nested properties? There are different types of nested fields. So I'll use the geo and device ones as a comparison to the event parameters. So we have device here, for example, and what we have is some set fields here that we can select. And this differs to the event parameters where there's just a key and then different types of value. Just to explain what nested fields are, they're basically just structured data inside a row. And if it's just single, like the device here, you can reference things directly. So device.category, for example, as there's only one set of values. But if it's repeated like this, then we need to unnest it. It's repeated, it's an array, so we need to unnest it into rows. This is a bit easier when I'm running through it as opposed to talking about it. So what we'll do is we'll start off by just pulling some device and some geo information. So I'll just go device and then dot, and then we can just pull, so let's say category, and then we'll get some geo information as well. So we'll say geo dot, let's go country, and we'll pull another one just for example, geo dot city. Now I'm getting an error here, and that's because I've not put a comma above. Cool. So that's how to just get some simple single record nested fields here. So I'll hit run, and then we'll see this data being pulled in. So we've got device category, geo country, geo city. What we can do is we can make this a little bit simpler by just naming them. So we can call it device category, for example, geo country. And this just makes it a little bit easier when we're looking at the data. Sweet, cool. So that's the first step, just working with single record nested fields. Next, I'm going to work with those repeated fields, those arrays in event parameters, as they're a little bit more tricky. Right, so we've done step 1 where we've pulled some single record nested fields. So we've got our device and geo data, but we have event parameters, and these work slightly differently. So with these, what we need to do is we need to unnest them when certain criteria is met in order to flatten them and then pull them into our table. Right, so at this point, we've pulled some single record nested fields. So we've got our device and geo information. Now, the next thing that's really important to do when working with your GA4 BigQuery like data is being able to get information from your event parameters. What these contain is specific information about that event. includes things like the session ID, so you can help group things together, as well as traffic information, etc., as well as customized stuff if that's what you want to do. The key difference here is obviously with device and geo, there's just single fields there for you to select. But with event parameters, if we were to look at the schema here, what we have is a key and then a value. And that value can either be a string value, an integer value, float value, or a double value. So if I come and preview, and I'll scroll down a bit and we'll look at, let's say, user engagement here. We've got a specific event here, user engagement. We've got our date and timestamp. And what we have here is the event params or event parameters. And then we have the key, which is almost the title of what we're selecting. And then we've got whether it's a string value, an integer value, etc. So what we can see here, for example, is the key value here, let's say is page referrer, and then the string value correlated with that is google.com. And the same for, let's say, page title, where we can see that page title in this case is this string value, GA4 scope explained. What we need to do when working with event parameters is we need to do some unnesting in order to flatten the list into the rows, and we need to be quite specific about it. So I'm going to cheat and copy and paste in a few lines for pulling in some session information from our event parameters. What we can see here is we're going to select the int value, so the integer value from the unnested event parameters, where the key equals GA session ID. And what we're pulling here is the session ID. So in this case, this is our session ID, and this is the integer value that we're looking to pull. And then we're doing the exact same for GA session number. I'll run this, and then we'll be able to see the export. So cool. So we've got all the other fields that we previously created. And now we have our GA session ID being pulled in as well, and the GA session number as well. Perfect. So taking it one step further, what we can do as well is pull other information as well from our event parameters. I've got another few lines that I've copied already, and I'm going to paste in, and this allows us to pull in some page details as well. So in this case, it's page location that I'm pulling and page title as well. So what we're doing here again is we're selecting the string value as opposed to the integer value earlier from the unnested event parameters, where the key equals page location, page title. Cool. And I'll hit run again. So command and enter, or you can just hit run there if you prefer. And then we can see this information is being pulled in as well. Right, so moving on to step 3 then. So how can we take this further? There are two main options. Option 1 is that you can use the logic that we've already used earlier to select specific fields or nested fields, and that's a great solution, nice and easy. The other option, so option 2, is that at Piped Out, we've already created a starter query. So what this query does, it pulls in all the key metrics and dimensions that you're most likely going to want. And then you can use that in one of two ways. So you can either use it in BigQuery itself in the interface and, customize it yourself however you like, in order to run specific queries. Or the other option is to connect it to Looker Studio as a custom query. This would function similarly to the native GA4 Looker Studio connector, but what you would have is the advantage that your data is less sampled and things like that. The disadvantage though is that this will run quite slowly, because every time that you click a button or change a filter or whatever, then that whole query would be rerunning. But either way, it's a great place to get started. Right, so if you want access to this starter query, then what you need to do is go to the Piped Out website, and then you go to Resources, Resource Library, and then fill in your details, and then you'll have access to the query and a load of other great resources that we have on the site. Right. So once you're there, what you'll do is you come to the GA4 template starter query, and what you can do is configure the project, the property ID, and the time period that you're looking at, and whether it's a daily or a streaming export. And then what you'll get is this full query, which does all this unnesting that I've talked about. It picks out all the different fields, and it does a lot of other funky stuff, correcting a lot of the problems that GA4 has innately. And then, as I say, you can use this in your own Looker Studio dashboards. You can run custom queries if you like, but it's a great place for getting started. If all of that feels like a lot of work, another option is using the product that we have at Piped Out called GA4 Pipeline. And what we can do is we can access your GA4 BigQuery data through BigQuery. And then from there, we can process it, allow you to customize it, build out your own custom conversions and session properties, and all these other things that are very hard, if not impossible to do on the GA4 interface. And then from there, you can have access to that data either through your own custom tables on BigQuery, or you have our own Looker Studio connector as well with sort of unsampled data and all of those other advantages as well.